Good evening, all. This is Stream Gamers. My name is Raymond. We are about to do a flight from Heathrow to Manchester in an A320 Neo. This is a continuation to my previous videos showing how the flight characteristics of the A320 aren't as broken as lots of people think they are. I am not being sponsored by Microsoft. However, I will say that Microsoft, once again, in my opinion, they've produced a fairly decent piece of software. Granted, it's new. Um, it's very different than anything else the sim community has had. I've been flying FSX, X-Plane, P3D, and now Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. I've been doing simming for, I want to say, probably about 5-6 years now. Certainly not anywhere near as long as others have, um, but long enough to realize that each of these sims are a little different. So I thought I would do another flight with the A320, um, showing what I know how to do, what I know how to do, and various different things that I've learned. So we're going to be doing a takeoff. We're going to be doing a start, a prep, using the FMS and doing the flight plans and everything else, um, doing the pushback, taxiing out to a given runway, lining up, getting ready for departure, climb out, cruise, preparing for descent, lining up with the runway, and putting it on the runway, taking it back to a gate. That all sounds like an awful lot, so we have a lot to get through. I may find myself needing to break this up in a couple of videos. So be prepared that if all of a sudden you see this and it's broken up into a couple of videos, because the whole process could take a little while, and the video may get long-winded and or take a long time, and some people don't have the attention span for all of that, myself included. So if you see it broken up, that's the reason why. I would appreciate a like and a subscribe if you like the content. I will continue to do some more. If you have suggestions or ideas, please put notes in the comments. I will read them all and reply to them all as possible. Just a little bit of house cleaning. As I begin my journey on YouTube, I released a few videos, and as I begin my journey on it, I want everybody to understand that I do have a full-time job, a full-time family, and so I do not have as much time to produce content as others do. So, but I do want to produce content. I belong to a flying group. Flybywires.net is our group. We're on Discord, and you can look us up on flybywires.net. This is because I play a multitude of games, and Fly-by-Wires is specifically for flight simulation. I've created this channel, Stream Gamers, which will be shared by that group and the other content which I intend to make. So, without further ado, let us begin the startup. So, Control 8 brings us to our overhead. I've put this little yellow circle so that I don't have to say, hey, look over here, hey, look over here. It should be somewhat evident. I've been told that not every time is it fairly evident. So external power is available. We'll put external power on. We're going to start our APU pump. Our whole process is that we're going to start up our APU to have the APU power running. We're going to put strobes on, beacon on, let the ground crew, let everybody know that there's some activity happening and taking place. I will not spend a lot of time in the true actual functionality of all of this, as some might think I should do. So if I've got it wrong, I will apologize. We're going to turn these dials on and do the alignments. If somebody can give me a brief description about the true terminologies for all of what this is all about, I would appreciate it. Near as I can understand, it is to do this alignment and to get the GPS and this screen to work properly and function correctly. So back up to the panel we go. We want our APU to be running, so we'll start our switch. we'll start our APU. We'll see that this will turn to available, and when it does, we will begin our flight plan setup and that kind of stuff while we're waiting for that. We should have our APU turned on, which is that. And you can see that the APU is coming up here. So I know that the APU is going to start. We're going to get an indication here. I believe it says available of some sort. It's at that point we're going to turn on the APU bleed, because without the APU bleed we will not be able to start the engines. We will then go up here and turn all the pumps on when we're ready to start engine. But before we do that, we need to get our flight configuration set up. So control 5 moves us down to this panel, which is the MC FMS. I'll apologize again if I use some incorrect terminology. I'm using your terminology as I understand it. And if I'm wrong, I certainly appreciate a notation in the comment section so that I might do it better next time. So, I use a couple of programs / websites to generate flight plans. I'm sure there are many different ways to do that. SkyVectors is one, and so on and so on. For this tutorial, will be using non-subscription based applications, websites, and so forth and so forth. There's lots out there that you can create a very real experience in terms of the flight simulator. But I won't be doing that. I won't be using that. SimBrief is one, and I'll just move that over. So this is SimBrief. This is the flight plan. You'll see there's the map, navigation, and so forth that we intend to travel through. Yeah, the varying different points as I scroll in. We'll be dialing in most of this into the FMS, and off we will go. We will depart. Our intentions will be to depart from runway 27 right. That will be our intention. Our arrival will be intended on 23 right. We are flying an A320. That's the airframe. And so in this application, the airliner, I put CA in that, my flight plan, which is 1101. Departure is Heathrow, arrival Manchester, and the alternative is Heathrow, which is kind of weird that the alternative is Heathrow, but it is, and so we won't worry about that. This isn't so much to get the exacting of all of this. This is just to be able to, for the most part, get this flight plan. So what I do with this is I will save the flight plan out, and then I will load it into Plan G, and I will show you how and what that looks like once it's loaded into Plan G. New, done. It is creating the plan right now as we speak. Down here and along the bottom, you're going to see a number of different simulations and devices and so forth that you can use to export the plan to. We will be doing it to MS20. And so we will download the plan. That's just a brief overview on how to do it. You can load this plan into the simulator at its opening screen. I won't be doing that. I'm on ground, as you saw, with APU probably by now running. So I'm going to load that into the Plan G, and I'll just give you a brief discussion about Plan G. I've done this before in my previous video, but I'll do it again just briefly so you can see it. This is Plan G, and when I'm connected to it, it then shows my little aircraft down there. You can see it down, whoops. You can see my little aircraft down there, and you can see all of the waypoints and points and so forth that are going to take me up to Manchester. These are the steps in which I plan to do that under, and this information window, if I hover, it gives me information. So E section North 52, so on and so on and so on. So we may, as we're inputting this into the FMS, we may need to understand and know that, because there are intersections, points, and so forth throughout the world that may have duplications of this particular woe button. Yeah, so if there's more than one, we need to be able to pick the one that we are intending to go to. And this North 52 number is what I use to determine which is the right one, plus the distance in which I intend to be traveling. And I'll show you that if it presents itself. So we'll move this aside. Oops. We'll move that aside. We'll move that aside. We'll move this aside. And so here we are. This is the FMS. So as we input this information in, you can use, like most of us simmers realize, there's a multitude of different ways of flying. But one thing we have to understand about the A320 that I've learned, and that is the A320 is really intended to be a computer manager rather than an actual pilot. The reality is, I watched a YouTube video not that long ago where a guy took an A320, took off, and landed and let the computer do absolutely everything. He did nothing. Didn't even have his hands on the controls. I think he managed to throttle at some point, if I remember correctly. So having said that, it can actually do all of that. This tutorial, I will try to experiment with a little bit of it, but not to the point where I'm going to make the flight go bad, let's say, because I don't know what I'm doing. So the initial page, or the init page, this is the page that we're going to be using. You see this GPS primary loss. We'll hit the clear button, which will take that away. I'm just going to verify, so we're still setting up. I should go and check to make sure our APU has started. Back up here, yes it has. So you can see that the APU is now available. I could now turn on the bleed, APU bleed, and I could turn on the pumps. I'm doing this maybe a little out of sequence, but my plan is turn battery master on one, turn it on, good, there we go. So now we are set, so when we decide to do our start, we can. So the from and the to, well, the from is EGLL / and the to is EGCC. I believe that's correct. I think that's Manchester. Yes, it is. So all you do is you punch it in, you go up to here, and you click. You get to this screen. There's the from and the to. There is nothing put in here. I'm told that if you had this route before, if you had flown this route before, you could save that plan in here, and you could pick it from time to time, various different ways. Because just because you fly here one time, you may fly this route, as a commuter route. You might fly it, every day. But based on wind conditions, airway traffic, and so forth, I would imagine that you could fly this route multiple different ways. And because of that, you may decide to fly it one particular way one time and another time a different way. I'm told you can save that in here. How that works yet, I don't know. I can't say because I don't know. But we'll hit the return button, and that takes us out. And our next thing is our cost index. So in a previous video, I talked about cost index, and I was told in the cost index to put it to 100, and then that would work. I am going to experiment this time briefly with it, and instead of putting 100, I'm going to put 15, and I will explain what I'm hoping to see once we get there to see it. So I'll just put that in. We have a short-ish flight in total today. I believe it's about 130 knots thereabouts, so we won't climb up too terribly high. Let's aim for 21,000. So 21,000 is indicated by 210, and we're going to put that into this field, and you're going to see this field here. The temperature is going to populate in here, and that's as I understand it, that's the temperature of the air at that altitude, and we need to be aware of that, and the engines and controls and everything else need to be aware of that temperature. So there it is, flight level 210 at minus 27 degrees. That should do it. Now, there are other things in here that we could look at, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time, as I did in the previous video. I'm not going to spend a lot of time deviating too terribly much from where we are. So ground temperature, what is the ground temperature? I guess we could put a temperature in there and we could say, well, it's 12 degrees. Don't know if that would even let me put it in. It doesn't. So let's not worry about it. Let's just get to the next. This one here is the performance page. So the performance page, 115 is our V1. 119 is our V2. And 122 is our 119 is our VR, and 122 is our V2. The way I understand V2 is that is our intended decision. When the aircraft hits 122 knots, that is the point in which we say there is no turnaround. We are going to be taking off, short of a wheel falling off or something like that. We may decide to abort, but that's the speed in which that will make that decision. That when we hit 122, that's it. We are going to pull back on the column and rotate. Our flaps. And throttle, I'm not going to set this. I'm going to have it all self-managed. I'm guessing I could put that in here and put that in there. I've not done it, so I'm not going to do it. The phases in the performance page are important to transition through and understand. So the next phase, which is the climb, our cost index is 15. Our managed climb out is going to be 172 knots. In my previous video, I had cost index at 100, and I still had 172, and I was sort of expecting, as this cost index changes, so does the managed portion of the flight, and that doesn't seem to be the case. You can override this by typing in whatever you like. For example, if you decided you wanted to climb out at 220 knots, you could put that in here and override the manage, and the FMS would adhere to this and then look to this and do whatever this said it were to be. We're not going to do that. We're going to leave it in its default configuration. We're going to look at our next phase. This is our cruise. So our cruise is with a cost index of 15. Our cruise is set at managed 250 knot. I'm going to change that, and I'm going to say no. I want to cruise at 290 knots. Next out, descend 250. I don't care for 250 on a decel. So I like, let me back that up. I prefer 220, although I will say that more often than not, I find myself trying to control that speed in a manual throttle position rather than the aircraft doing it. I know it can be done, but I typically don't. I typically manage it myself. So the next phase is a phase that I haven't spent a lot of time. The transition altitude is 10,000. I haven't spent a lot of time messing around in here with temperatures and wind and all of these other things. Mostly it's because I haven't really necessarily needed to. And the go around, so you're 133 and you go around and so forth when you make the decision to do so. A brief talk about that whole go around process. If you come in too low, you run the risk of, obviously touching down too low and or crashing and or causing yourself a bunch of grief. So you'd rather be high than too low, because high, if you can't get the aircraft to descend and you miscalculated your approach to the runway and you find yourself too high, considerably too high, you can always throttle back up, pull the flaps up, pull the gear back up, throttle up, and take off and do a loop and come back and redo it. No harm in it. But if you find yourself too low, too slow, you find yourself having to mash the throttles in a panic, pulling flaps up or gear up and yarding back on the yoke to try to gain lift again. And very often you see people in simulators that do that invariably hit the ground because they get that decision far too late. They make that decision far too late. So my point to that conversation is find yourself too high, not too low, and you will more often than not have a better landing experience. Find yourself setting up further. The A320, you should be in mostly configured mode, down to the right altitude, at the right speed, 10 miles before their threshold. If you find yourself not being configured correctly and you're 5 miles before, plan to go around. Just simply plan to go around. Now, if you're just marginally high and you're marginally fast, you can still maybe save that. But if you find yourself, thousands of feet above the airport from where you plan to land, for example, if the runway elevation was 0, not that it is, but let's just say it is, and I found myself 5 miles before the runway ticking along at 280 knots at 5,500 feet, I'm probably just going to go around. Um, I may be able to correct the 5,500, just nose her down, but I won't fix the speed because I'm going to gain too much speed. Likewise, you look at it from the other perspective. You find yourself at the right speed. You find yourself sitting around at 220, 210 knots, but you find yourself 8,000 feet above ground. You have the same problem. 5 miles out at 8,000 feet to descend in 5 miles, yes, you can do it. Pull the yoke down and just nose her down. Yeah, you got no passengers, so they should be okay. But you will gain so much speed that by the time you get closer to the runway to get to the flare, you're so fast that just the slightest wrong part of the flare will give you nose back up and reclimb. And again, you'll find yourself having to do all these things so quickly. At least for me, it just doesn't happen. So, having said all of that, a more perfect approach and angle and getting yourselves ready for me, 3,500 feet, 3,000 feet above the runway in that area, um, 10 miles out, ticking along 220-ish knots in that area, I'm going to be good. At that speed, I can just kind of let it keep coasting along, drop the gear some 5 miles out. I got flaps configured. I don't have to nose down, so I can control speed. I won't gain more speed than I need to. I can use speed brakes to control the speed. I can use flaps because I can deploy flaps at that point. If we look, a little too quick. If we look here, we see that our flaps um, at 220, we can retract them, we can push them out. So we're good at 220. And if we have our speed at 280, we can't technically use flaps, right? Not technically. So you can see, 230, 215, 200, 185, and 170 for full. So that's the reason why I say, if you're at 210, 220 in that area, that's a good speed to be because you have control of, deploying flaps. Keep in mind, I get the fact that this is a game and it's a simulation, and realistically, the flaps aren't going to blow off, and that isn't going to happen. But if you wanted to get a true feeling of the aircraft and how and what it's supposed to do, that's the way it's supposed to be done. For me, and an A320 pilot may critique that and say, "What are you talking about? This is how you do it." That's fine. Um, I seem to be able to take off and land fine, not in the real world. If I was flying in a real A320, being in real pilot, I would probably change my opinion about what I've said to you as well. Right. So enough of that rambling on. I realize that the video is going to be long because I want to go through this detailed. So our next step is the flight plan itself. So we click on flight plan. Here we are at Heathrow, and our intentions are to go to Manchester, and we have a number of stops along the way to get there. So let's find our stops. They are right here, right there. Now, some of this stuff, um, like this waypoint 01, will not be in the FMS. These points here likely won't be in the FMS. These are flight sim, sim briefs points. I don't know how it does it, but it seems to put that in. This intersection is probably a realistic intersection that we will probably intersect with. Um, where is that one? Um, well, you know what we'll do is we'll try this one here as well. I think this will be a good one, and this one I don't think will be. But let's try this one right here, so you can see how we put it in. So LO03A. So it's L O 0 0 3 A. We need to put that after this here. So when we click it, if it's a good one, it should go in there. I did it wrong. I apologize. You click this. There's your waypoint. LO03A. Put it in there. Not in database. And I suspect we're going to find out that the vast majority of all of these aren't going to put in. So I'm going to start with this whatever you call that. I'm going to start with that one. I'm going to move that over here so I can still see it. It is, where is it? UMLAT. Insert. Boom. It's there. Next one is WOBUN. WOBUN. In. And the next one is, scroll down a bit, Welland. I think that's right. Welland? Yes, Welland is correct. Boom. So this is what I was talking about before. There are a number of these points around the world that are the same, and you can see the varying different coordinates. Mostly, I know it's going to be this one because it's 49 nautical miles away. The other one is 3930, and the other one is 4811. And I don't plan on flying that far, so I know it's this. But if I would put my cursor on plan G, it would give me this 52 north coordinate, and that would tell me that that's the one. Welland. KUPA. And enter. Now you notice it's not here. We put the up arrow button. Now we see it. We click it again, and we go to the next one. Timpo. Timpo. Yes. Enter. Again, up arrow, and there it is. And the next one, Elvas. I always like to double check to make sure. I get letters sometimes turned around and mixed up from what they actually are. So it's this one here, and now it is TNT. Oh, I like that one. TNT. Enter. And again, we can see it's 5,100 miles, 4,600 miles, 583 miles. None of those make any sense. It's going to be this one. Right. So we have all of our flight plan in. If I use the arrow keys, you can see there's TNT and there is Manchester, coming all the way back down to our starting point. This is the insert, so we're going to insert that. That's the equivalent of execute, but so there we go. It's executed or inserted. It's turned green. We look, and as said before, these screens are alive. Everything is aligned properly. Our plan is this right here. If I just do this, if I scroll out just a bit, you can see there's the first intersection that we'll turn at, and there's a multitude or the other ones that I've been putting in, and carrying on. There's our destination, some 130 and change away. So I will put that back to a more manageable there. Good. Now that is configured and set up. I am going to finish the start procedure. Finish the start procedure. That's going to go to, whoops, that's going to go like so. That's the space bar. No, right, I forgot that's the button. Okay, so I'm going to go back up to the center panel here. We're going to begin the engine start. Now, the engine start at this point is a fairly simple process. All of our pumps are on. Our APU is running. We have power. It's really a simple process, and that is because the APU bleed is on. When we go back to this view, scroll back. We are going to start one of the engines, and we're going to do pushback. My previous videos have done that kind of backwards. So I'm going to have one of the engines spooling up, at which point, and it'll be starting and so forth, but at which point I'm going to initiate pushback and get ready for our taxi. So without further ado, let's get our ATC. I'm going to, I shouldn't connect the jetway. That was silly of me, wasn't that? Yeah, we don't have a jetway to connect. I don't know why why my aircraft is sitting here, but it is. Anyways, request pushback. When you're looking at this configuration, you're looking at which way you intend to put the tail. Okay, that's its purpose. I'm intending to head off in that direction, I believe, and so I will have the tail go to the left. I have to go back in the aircraft. I have to remove the park brake. I have to put the selector switch in start, and we'll start engine number 2. We'll go back, wait for pushback to take place, turning to the left. When I'm done turning to the left, as far as I want to turn to the left, I will hit straight, steer straight, and then I will stop. And here we are, pushing back. And you can hear, I don't know if you can hear the engine starting to fire, but you can see it's starting to spool. I'm just going to get ourselves lined up with the line here or thereabouts. That's close enough. Not perfect, but close enough. We'll get it to go straight, and we'll get it to stop. At which point we will go back into the cockpit. We will put the parking brake back on, and our engine is running. And now it's as simple as just firing up number 2. If I look at the engine panel, I'm going to go here, look at the engine panel. There it is. Here comes my engines. 19 is the good start engine, and this is starting to climb and starting to come up. N2 is climbing up, N1 will be climbing here shortly. I see N1 is climbing. And there's our lineup. Now, I've noticed that this doesn't necessarily coincide with my intended departure. Why that is, I don't know. You see, it's telling me to go to runway 09, and my intentions were to depart at 27. Neither here nor there, I can depart at 09 as well, if that's what we need to do. So, you know what? We'll do that. We'll just follow this departure 09. That's the way ATC wants it to be done. I know there's a way to change ATC to say, no, I want to depart a different runway. But you can see here that you taxi, hold short, runway 27 right. And that's because the flight plan is filed that way. But for some reason, it appears that it's wanting me to depart at runway 9. And I'm requesting 27 departure. I don't know why that is, but nevertheless, I will follow it as I said. So let us just taxi out and follow and get to the runway threshold. In we are. And just come on. There we go. Okay. Nope. That's what I want. There it is. So parking brakes are going to come off. Parking brake is off. Starter switches are turned off. Speed brake is armed. And flaps are set. Now we will taxi. And we're good. If I remember correctly, our taxi speed shouldn't exceed 20. I could be wrong about that, but I try very hard to kind of sort of stay in line with that, just because, yeah, you shouldn't be, speeding along. You should be getting to corners and have controlled turns and be prepared to stop in the event that something, is coming across, like Microsoft Flight Simulator often wants to push fuel trucks in front of you and forklifts and all those wonderful things. Why that is, I'd like to know the programming behind it all, but I don't know. Um, Realism maybe, but it doesn't make sense that a car would be speeding down the runway or down the taxiway for that matter, unless there's, I guess, something specific about it. But notice how I'm going around a curve or going around a corner in a reasonably controlled manner. Of course, that's all being done with the rudder pedals. Um, I'm assuming it's wanting to put me at 09 left, and I think that's where this guidance path is. So we will just continue to follow that guidance path out. I fly with real live weather typically. I fly with live aircraft and or AI aircraft that may be in the area. So if there are flights coming in and out of the airport, we should see them. Um, so I'm being mindful of traffic. You can see a vehicle cutting across the path of us over there, but he's far enough ahead of us that shouldn't be a problem. You can see the aircraft out there, that C-25, 20,000 feet out there, so he's obviously not a problem for us. There's another guy, the Sit Lord, whatever it is, South Lord. He's out there. I can't see his altitude because it's in the middle of my center of the monitor, or I mean of the windscreens. We are about 42 minutes into the video, and so I'm probably at the threshold. I'm probably going to stop it and cut this video in half. I'll continue the flight, but I'll probably chop the video up because we haven't even we haven't even gotten on the runway to start our departure, and we're ticking along 45, 42 minutes right now. So that's okay. We'll break it up. It's no big deal. That's the other thing I think that's important with this is we in the sim community, some of us anyways, are wanting to forego some of the boring stuff. For example, to do an 140 nautical mile flight, you can see that the setup has taken me, with some explanation, of course, but the setup with explanation has taken me quite a bit of time. Um, and I suspect in true aviation, we would see that take place as well. I doubt that a pilot or pilot and co-pilot decide to say, 15 minutes before their flight, all right, let's go flying. I'm sure there's a lot of setup in the midst of all of that. So we are here. We're at our threshold. I'm going to stop the flight here, and I will pick it up in another video. You will probably see a bit of a different positioning and everything else because my intentions are is to save this video here, restart the whole thing up, get myself to this point again, and then reinitialize the video into video number 2. So I will be along shortly. You will see these only uploaded once the entirety of this series is completed. Once again, Stream Gamers, in association with flybywires.net. My name is Raymond. Be safe, enjoy life, and we will talk in the next one. Bye bye.